Hello and welcome. Today we're going to look at Pragmaticworks software tool LegiTest, meant for testing all your data-driven functions. It's a pretty easy to use interface right within Visual Studio's, pretty declarative in nature, has more of an SSIS design feel to it. You'll be able to manage and test your own data, and the way we set up the software, it should pretty much integrate with almost all build processes and development software such as TeamCity, TFS, things like that. Well, let's sneak into Visual Studios and see how LegiTest actually works. Here we are within Visual Studios 2013. First and foremost, LegiTest is a Visual Studios extension. As of now, it does work with Visual Studios 2012 and 13, and as the making of this video, we're about to incorporate it with 2015. This simply is just for the creation of the project. Of course, you can compare data in SQL 2008, in various versions. That's just for the actual creation of this project, which, in order to do, you just simply go to File, New, Project. This is based off of the industry standard MS test and then unit test. So you find it under the C# templates, just near the bottom there, and you pick and hit OK. Now we can see it's a pretty declarative in nature, that type of design, just kind of a toolbox similar to SSIS where you drag these items in here to the middle, each one being performed logically. It's a top to bottom, left to right execution. And you just set up your test as you see fit. You can see on the left just a quick glance of these items, some file and directory manipulations. There's things specific for analysis services, reporting services, integration services. So a lot of items here. But if you're new to unit testing as well as this type of an interface, there's some nice wizards that we have, and that's what we're going to use here in this demo. We're going to walk through and see how you can use our wizards to create very quick SQL validation tests, SSIS validation tests, analysis services, all of the above. So let's go ahead and just look at the interface, and then we'll hop right into creating them. So we talked about the toolbox already. The right-hand side, the Solution Explorer, is just as you'd expect, but we're going to see that this is going to grow and increase as we create our tests because we're using this interface, but it's generating the C# code that is necessary in the background. We don't have to worry about it, and you'll see it generates thousands of lines of code, and we're just working right in this nice design pane. The center here is going to be how it's our canvas for creating unit tests. We have a group level, and we have a test level. Our best practice is always to establish a group. So if we are doing an SSIS validation testing, the group would represent an individual package, and we would create lots of micro tests under them. That is how we recommend and how unit tests should be done. You create small little tests for the various aspects of your package in this example, so that maybe 5 tests you have, 4 of them accomplished. Now you can really hone in and focus on that 5th element, that item that you know has failed, rather than, and these tests should be running in 1 minute, 2 minutes tops. If you're doing a 20, 30-minute unit test and you're sitting there and have to walk away because it's taking so long, you've gone probably a little too far. But we have a lot of information on our website on best practices and white papers on these items. Let me go ahead and get rid of this test group because we're not going to use this. We're going to make our own. I'm going to right-click, add group, and here is where we can go to the various wizards that will walk through these tests. We're going to start with this item here, the SQL Server data comparison. The idea behind this test, to pick a source and a target. You can decide, you have to set this up. We're going to assign queries to them, dictate connection managers, and we're going to compare the values using a key column. So we are going to actually compare the items within the columns. So let's go ahead with no further ado, start the test. The left data set. Okay, all I need to do is go in here and decide what my connection manager is. This is going to go Microsoft SQL Server. I'm going to go against my local host and pick a transactional database we use here at Pragmaticworks. And the query. There's a table here. This is a educational-based database, so there's a lot of donations, scholarships, classes, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and do something looking at donations. My key column, we're going to look at events, and we're going to aggregate on the amount column, and we're actually going to then compare this into my data warehouse to the fact donations table. So this query on my source is done. The right query, I got to change the connection manager. We actually have to go to my data warehouse now. Oops. Put the period there. my data warehouse, and the query. Go ahead and add this query in. Obviously, I need to do some joins because I'm going to need to map on a key. The event AK is the key in this case. It's going to match my event ID, and I also did some aliasing there to make it a little easier. And let me mark that, the event ID being my key column. So all set and done. Looks pretty simplistic and straightforward, but let me see what's and show you exactly what's been achieved here. I mentioned the solution explorer is going to grow. There's all my references. We can see already as well that there has been some C# already generated. Going into the test, this is what we're looking at, the assets themselves. Here's the query I created. Here's the other query for the target table, the respective connection managers. These are resources, and they can be reused throughout the test. Think of these as, if we are looking in SSIS terms, a project level connection manager. It's here, and it can be pointed to. And what uses them are these items within the execution tracks. So in this example, this is an execute query grid. You can see it's been brought in. It's asking, well, what connection do I need here? We pointed to the left one, which is the transactional, and what query do you want me to run? It's going to do this and then store it in the resource key right here. That's what's happening on the second one as well. We can see it says one of two execution tracks. Here's my right query. It just changed those different assets, taking them from below here and storing it into this resource key. And then we're just going to wrap it all together and compare them based off of what I've dictated here in my manifest, which is what this compare grids is doing. You can see there's some smaller options here that you can take care of as well, ignoring aggregates, ignoring different rows if you needed to. But we just want match up on my event ID and tell me where there's differences. So that test, it's all set and done, but we're not going to run it just yet. We're going to actually go ahead and see what an SSIS validation test, because there are lots of things out there that can help you with unit tests for your data, but this is going to be a little different. SSIS package test. It does say SSIS 2014. That is because this machine, that's all it has as far as SSIS services. But if you had 2008 or 12, those options would be available to you. So let's start it off. Where is my package? We cover anywhere a package could be: file system, the MSDB, SQL Server, or the newer SSIS catalog. They're all here. So I'm going to use the catalog. I'm going to go here. We're going to grab the package I need here. It's going to be, let's take a look. Not this one, not this one. It's going to actually be right here in the higher ed, these dimension loads. It's actually going to be the Factless Club package right here. So we see this. Let me just omit these other items that I don't need. This is another best practice. And at a group level, one package per group. So Factless Club is going to be my focus here. There's no passwords as part of it. And these are the different tests you can decide at this point, do you want to have it generate? Validation execution, so it's going to actually go against every task in the control flow. It's going to verify that it executes below 10 seconds, so performance based. It's going to generate some outline tests about the data loaded in the data flows. And then we're actually going to do similar to like the SQL validation tests for this. So let's go ahead and finish and let it create it. So here we have an indication because there are things to do. I'm doing a SQL validation test, but I didn't actually put in any queries or define any connection managers. So that's all that's left. Really quick and easy, just what we did. Here's my expected query. This is going to be coming from my source table. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and once again, I'm going to do a quick, simple little query just against in this case, we did the factless_club package. So I'm just going to do this query here from the transactional on my club table. My target, which is going to be in the data warehouse, it's going to be from the dim_club table. So let's add this query in here. Once again, just grabbing the club IDs and verifying that the value of the club columns are matching up here. But I need my connection manager. So let's go here real quick. SQL Server. Let's configure it. Done, done, done. Got to get the data from the right places. Yes, yes. And then my data warehouse. And just like we did in the SQL, we do need to make sure that the manifest is set up. Let's gather up the columns from each side. The club AK, we don't want to compare that. We want to match up on that. So let me get rid of it here and simply just add it up here. And voila. This looks good. Manifest is good. We can see the validations exist for each one of these. Here's the package execution as a whole, making sure that if we just run the package, is that going to go less than 10 seconds? Then it goes on each task, as I mentioned. Here's the execute SQL task that's actually truncating a table. Is it going under 10 seconds? This is the data flow task. It's doing the performance, but this is also where we're achieving the goal for the SQL validation. So all of 3 tests done in the blink of an eye. And once again, as I mentioned, what we're seeing here done, I've been explaining this. We like to think of these as 2-minute tests, but we can see now, if I go into the Factless Club tests, there's a fair amount of C# code that's been written out for us, and we didn't need to touch any of it. This is just to show you what's happening in the background. And I know you're very tempted to see the results of these tests, how we execute them, but we're going to do one more. Just stay with me. We're going to do analysis services. You can see how quickly this gets added in. This is a multi-dimensional cube that I have, but we do support tabular as well. Let's go ahead here and grab the database, higher ed. We're going to grab that cube. And in this test, I'm actually just going to do the measure tests, and I'm going to limit it to the first 3 attributes. So I'm going to go ahead, finish, boom, everything's done. And this is a little bit different. We can see it's actually written out the MDX for me. So it's doing these counts, and we're going to compare it to the database where this information is derived from. So it's bringing in a lot of this. It's doing all this work and effort for us. I'm going to build this again so we have it all refreshed. But I've now created these 3 very straightforward and essential data validation integrity tests. Now, where do they get used at? If you're in Visual Studios, of course, it's going to be the Test Explorer. I have it just right here. But after you save, it will build. Let's build this so we can have all the items. So here are all my tests, and I can just hit run all, or I can highlight some and run them. I'm going to run them all just so we can have it in the background. And while this is going, I'm going to let you know that these, when you build this in the same directory where this package, this project is stored, in the development bin, there is a DLL, and that's how you would run this. And you could automate this outside of Visual Studios. It could be just part of any MS build, part of a test container. You're just pointing to this item, and then you can output the results to a log file, text file, however you see fit. Now in this example, I actually have a failure, and this is actually because there's something wrong with my club measure count. It actually, in the source, there is 0. So in the in my actual club measure, there's actually nothing in there, but I'm supposed to have 8,000 records. So it's just a small issue I have. But it's telling me I need to clean this up. Let's get rid of this just so we can see. So you don't want me to go and fix my cube while you're watching. Let's look at this though and verify everything's working good so you can see the next item. The way we recommend to view the results. And that's going to be with the LegiTest server, the web application version of this, the web-based platform. We haven't talked about these items at the top here. Parameters, these are things you can set up. You just name a parameter, include the value, and map it to an element within your tests. So now you can easily move from QA to dev and associate a parameter, let's say, with the connection string of your connection managers. So you can more easily change these values without having to recreate tests or anything like that. Well, server integration, this is where you can point, if you have LegiTest server, which is a separate item, we can see the results. Oops. Localhost. We'll be able to see the results of our tests. We can also send the DLLs up there and execute these tests from the web-based platform. And you can also schedule it from there. So it's just a way that we recommend to better this. So let's go ahead and build this. But I'm going to do something a little tricky here. I'm going to change some of the data coming from one of my databases. I'm going to force a failure here. Okay. So let's run these tests again. Save this, build this as I make these changes, and let's run. Now I'm going to have 2 tests fail. I made a change to a donations table. So the SQL test, which was using that, and the donation amount measure, wrong. Here's how we view the results. Let's click on SQL test. At the very bottom, we actually get a grid. It's listed out in plain text, but we get this. It tells us the exact identifier, the key of the column, the expected amount versus the actual amount. I basically just increased the dollar value by 1 for these, as you can see. which is good. You know, if you're in Visual Studio, you can see this and you can export these results to a text file to be read. But the LegiTest server, this is how it looks here. This dashboard, here's my project. This is the icon where I can run the test right from this browser. I can also use this to schedule a test. And also, exclusive to the LegiTest server, I can actually create notifications for these tests. And I could do it at the top level if the entire test fails, or you can drill down to specific elements. So if I only wanted to create notifications or separate notifications, create a notification for the integration services, email this group, create a notification for the data comparison, and email this group. You can elaborately set up these notifications when any issues, or maybe you just want to know when a test ran was successful. That is available for you for functionality. But what we want to look at is this. Here's my execution. I'm actually going to quickly go back to the client. Let's make our results succeed again, just so you can see something. All right, make a quick change here. Let's run this. If the world in the universe is correct, we should see green down the board. And we do. Going back here, I just want to refresh this just so you can see. It does keep track. It always represents the last execution right here. And when we click on it, we get a historical representation. So you can look and see 5, 6, however many times it's executed, how it's been going. But I can see the listing here. Now I go into this failed execution, the first one we uploaded to the server, gives me a breakdown of everything that's going on. So I know exactly this test failed, all the rest of these succeeded. This one down here, this compare values failed. This is the version of the grid that we have. Very straightforward, nice and colored and highlighted exactly what the difference is. You don't need to search far and wide now. You know exactly what's going on and how to fix this. Here's all my key columns and the difference in the values. This is where the power comes in for our LegiTest server. Just nice and easy to read those results. And we have all those unique items as far as running the tests, scheduling the tests, and creating notifications. There is one last thing that is exclusive for the LegiTest server, which can enhance this experience, and that's going to be the system coverage. Now, to understand this, let's go back to the client. I'm here, and I'm creating a test. Let's focus on the SQL test here. When I create this, I can actually go into system coverage. I get a list of all my tests. So here's my SQL test. I'm going to say, in this test, because I created this, I know that I covered the DBO donation table. So I'm going to add this in here. And it covered the fact _ donations table. Make sure we grab the right one. Those are the two things that this test is responsible for. So this is set, this is done. I'm going to build this and send this out. So this will be an example of fully utilizing the test and including the coverage of it. So it's going to go up to my server. We're not going to get a third result, but the reason for this is now the assemblies are up there with their respective coverage items. And then me, as a DBA, working on here, I can create my own reports. I can say, I want to make sure I'm not creating these tests. I have my developers, my QA guys are creating these, but I want to make sure the things that need to be covered are going to be the DBO.donation table. That's good. And I also need the fact _ donation table. And actually, I told them, and they need to be also including the fact _ scholarship table. So this is my report. Let's take a look and let's see what tests have they been creating here. Okay, well, I see some green, but I see gray too. So there's some items that aren't covered. What's not? So they've covered DBO donation, and the last execution of the test that included this object was a success. The same for fact donations. But nowhere in any of these tests that exist in here do I have fact scholarship. I got to send them an email, and someone needs to create a test to make sure everything's working well with looking at that object. This is how the system coverage works. You can actually also view the reports right here within the Visual Studios also. We'll wait here. Let's see these graphs. Voila. So there's a lot more that goes into this. Unit testing is robust. Obviously, it's depending on your environment, your needs, and how you want to test. But unit testing, data application, integration testing. This is what LegiTest is. There's a lot of different ways you can establish and set this up, but your entire BI stack and beyond can be covered. We saw the providers, Oracle, tabular, multidimensional. If it can hook into the providers that we offer, you can collect the data and you can make comparisons. So there's quite robust features within this tool. This concludes the demonstration of LegiTest and LegiTest Server. But if you need any more information, maybe just going back on the things that we covered in this video, or if you wanted more details on the items that we haven't covered, because there really were so many things in the LegiTest toolbox, you can just visit our website at www.pragmaticworks.com/products. Specifically, you'd want to go to the help page, and you will see everything is there. This is actually also where you can go to reach out to our sales team if you wanted to schedule a live demonstration to go one-on-one with one of our technicians and really hone in on what LegiTest can do for you. Now don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice day.